Welcome. Today we will be reading Lesson 218 in the workbook, and from the text, Chapter 19, Section 2, Sin versus Error. And now for Lesson 218. I am not a body, I am free. For I am still as God created me. (198) Only my condemnation injures me. My condemnation keeps my vision dark, and through my sightless eyes I cannot see the vision of my glory. Yet today I can behold this glory and be glad. I am not a body, I am free. For I am still as God created me. Today's review idea is only my condemnation injures me. In repeating this idea throughout the day, does it become clear that what one gives, one receives? For ideas do not leave the mind that thinks them. And to attack anyone or anything is but to attack oneself. And who condemns and attacks but one who is fearful and believing one is weak, vulnerable, and small? For love does not condemn, recognizing its eternal and limitless nature. Therefore, conceal not the majesty and glory that one was created to be. Offer all unloving thoughts to the teacher of truth, who will guide one to one's magnificent and joyful reality. And now for our text reading for today, from Chapter 19, Section 2, Sin versus Error. It is essential that error be not confused with sin. And it is this distinction that makes salvation possible. For error can be corrected, and the wrong made right. But sin, were it possible, would be irreversible. The belief in sin is necessarily based on the firm conviction that minds, not bodies, can attack. And thus the mind is guilty and will forever so remain unless a mind not part of it can give it absolution. Sin calls for punishment as error for correction. And the belief that punishment is correction is clearly insane. Sin is not an error, for sin entails an arrogance, which the idea of error lacks. To sin would be to violate reality and to succeed. Sin is the proclamation that attack is real and guilt is justified. It assumes the Son of God is guilty and has thus succeeded in losing his innocence and making himself what God created not. Thus is creation seen as not eternal, and the will of God open to opposition and defeat. Sin is the grand illusion underlying all the ego's grandiosity. For by it God himself is changed and rendered incomplete. The Son of God can be mistaken. He can deceive himself. He can even turn the power of his mind against himself. But he cannot sin. There is nothing he can do that would really change his reality in any way, nor make him really guilty. That is what sin would do, for such is its purpose. Yet for all the wild insanity inherent in the whole idea of sin, it is impossible. For the wages of sin is death, and how can the immortal die? A major tenet in the ego's insane religion is that sin is not error but truth, and it is innocence that would deceive. Purity is seen as arrogance, and the acceptance of the self as sinful is perceived as holiness. And it is this doctrine that replaces the reality of the Son of God as his Father created him and willed that he be forever. Is this humility? Or is it rather an attempt to wrest creation away from truth and keep it separate? Any attempt to reinterpret sin as error is always indefensible to the ego. The idea of sin is wholly sacrosanct to its thought system and quite unapproachable except with reverence and awe. It is the most holy concept in the ego's system, lovely and powerful, wholly true, and necessarily protected with every defense at its disposal. For here lies its best defense, which all the others serve. Here is its armor, its protection, and the fundamental purpose of the special relationship in its interpretation. It can indeed be said the ego made its world on sin. Only in such a world could everything be upside down. This is the strange illusion that makes the clouds of guilt seem heavy and impenetrable. The solidness that this world's foundation seems to have is found in this. For sin has changed creation from an idea of God to an ideal the ego wants, a world it rules, made up of bodies, mindless and capable of complete corruption and decay. If this is a mistake, it can be undone easily by truth. Any mistake can be corrected if truth be left to judge it. But if the mistake is given the status of truth, to what can it be brought? The holiness of sin is kept in place by just this strange device. As truth, it is inviolate, and everything is brought to it for judgment. As a mistake, it must be brought to truth. It is impossible to have faith in sin, for sin is faithlessness. Yet it is possible to have faith that a mistake can be corrected. There is no stone in all the ego's embattled citadel that is more heavily defended than the idea that sin is real. The natural expression of what the Son of God has made himself to be and what he is. To the ego, this is no mistake, for this is its reality. This is the truth from which escape will always be impossible. This is his past, his present, and his future. for he has somehow managed to corrupt his father and change his mind completely. Mourn then the death of God, whom sin has killed. And this would be the ego's wish, which in its madness it believes it has accomplished. Would you not rather that all this be nothing more than a mistake, entirely correctable, and so easily escaped from that its whole correction is like walking through a mist into the sun? For that is all it is. Perhaps you would be tempted to agree with the ego that it is far better to be sinful than mistaken. Yet think you carefully before you allow yourself to make this choice. Approach it not lightly, for it is the choice of hell or heaven. We see in this section the ego's notion of sin is that one's mistakes are unforgivable, guilty, and deserving of punishment, thus making guilt real and attack fully justified. Sin is an attack both on creation and the loving source that created it eternally innocent. Sin is a treasured stone in the ego's foundation, and on which a world of mindless bodies which are diseased and dying is built. Yet faith and the Holy Spirit see mistakes as merely errors, requiring correction, not punishment. When one brings the thought of sin to the truth, sin is easily undone. And in the two different ways of interpreting mistakes, the choice is between a living hell or a living heaven.